Not yesterday, but last week, Brian and I talked about travel, and it kind of, went down the route of hiring A players and how do you have a team that runs the business for you, when you are in fact traveling. So today we're going to talk about building a team more so, hiring A players, and then everything that kind of inspires from that. So, I'll kind of start off with it. A players, right? There was a really good book that I read when I was working in the recruitment world. The book was called Who period H period O period. That's the title of the book. I can't remember the name of the author, but the reason why we had to read it as part of, it was a kind of a company initiative, I guess you can say, as a business local in BC. We read it to learn a little bit more about what A players look like, and that way we could use that and how we define that to help hire for the clients that we had worked for when we were working corporate recruitment. So hiring A players, the verbiage that they kind of use is that an A player is somebody who lives and breathes the values of the company. They are punctual. They embody all of the good qualities and traits of an all-star employee. And it's somebody that is modelable, essentially, right? So what I mean by that is, when you're looking to hire more people and you want to go build maybe a scorecard off of somebody, you can go use some of your best employees and be like, hey, this is our best employee current state for XYZ reasons. We want more of Jimmy. Jimmy's our best A player. How do we find more of Jimmy? Right? So having an A player having more and more A players allows you to accelerate business more, faster, quicker, more efficiently, because these people are who you want to be working for you, right? One thing, a thing that we always learned as we've been and worked for other companies was build the people and the people will build the business, right? Well, you can't do that if you have a C player. And a C player is somebody that comes to work with a negative attitude, doesn't embody the values and the characteristics that makes the company great, can cause issues with other employees, all that kind of stuff. Those are the people that are toxic, and those are the people that can really turn down the morale of a company or the culture of a company, right?
Yeah. I think it's also important to know is like the evolution, in a way, the evolution of a company from startup to, a large organization, because I think that's, when we're talking about hiring A players, there's, in my opinion, two different types of A players that you can hire. You can hire A players from a personality standpoint, and you can hire A players from a technical and skills standpoint. So the latter part, the skills, technical and skills, A player is definitely someone that you would want to consider hiring. I would say later in the journey. And the reason for that is it's predominantly like if they have more technical knowledge and they're coming in with an expert skill set, they're going to cost more money. So, put things into perspective with our Amazon business, even with our, our service-based businesses, what we have always done is more so hire A players from a soft skill, a personality standpoint, people that are coachable, that align with our values, that are eager and hardworking, that are integral, all of these things, because we know that at the end of the day, one, they're gonna be more cost effective for us being a lean startup, okay? And then number two as well, we know that we'd be able to groom them into something more. And this is a very empowering thing for us, for myself and Eric, because we got to empower a lot of people to really give them an opportunity to show them what they're worth. And they may not know what they're worth, but I can't even count how many people on our team right now came in with little to no skill set. They had a willingness to succeed. They wanted to be a part of that journey, and they showed that. And we were able to take a risk on them, and it literally has worked out to our advantage in almost every single scenario. In our Amazon business, for example, when we first hired, let's call that the first evolution, giving somebody an opportunity in a very lean startup. During that time frame, those people are very, very likely doing pretty much every job. If Clara's listening to this right now, when Clara joined us to help us with the F-based startup, she did every single task. But as we evolved and as we grew, okay, we started to figure out what she is really good at and what she really enjoys. Now we're empowering her to do something that she loves to do. There's a quote, when you love what you're doing, you'll never work another day in your life, right? So if you can get to that point where they're a part of that vision, they're helping you out on the front end, but then you really give them that opportunity to hone in on something that they love to do and what they're great at doing, then your company starts to evolve. Okay, so I would call that the second portion of kind of the evolution. And that last portion that I already mentioned is when you get to a point where you probably are doing extremely well, you're doing consistent sales and you're growing consistently, but you're not growing exponentially, that's when you start to hire and outsource people that are even better than you. So like hiring people that are, for example, like one of my mentors, Zan, he has 3 40-year-olds on his team, over 40, that came from large, Fortune 500 companies to help him grow his business. Those people, as you can imagine, given their experience, they're looking for $150,000, $200,000 salaries. That's simply something that you can't afford on the front end, but you know that you'll get an ROI on them once you have all of the infrastructure and settings in place. Because at the same time, attracting those people into your business in the first place, they need to see longevity within it. They need to see results so that they can be more bought in and they can understand some bottlenecks that they can instantly impact for them to grow. And then that you'll get an instant return on investment on them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think ROI in an employee is huge, right? Like how does that person grow with you? And I think one of the best decisions that we made when we started getting smaller to get bigger. So again, Claire wore all these different hats, but as a leader, one of the things that you can do to empower your employees is actually giving them the ability to pick what they like best. Obviously, we're there to help guide what that looks like and give feedback on, hey, we think you're really good at X, Y, Z. But, Clara, she picked client success, right? How can she make our students more successful? Why does she like that? She likes working with people. She likes bringing results in for people, all of these fun things. But she was the person that built out everything that we do now for client success, right? And that, now that's her baby, right? That's her wing of the business, right? And it allows her to grow that portion of it without Brian and I having to worry with it. Obviously, we're there high level to make sure we're making educated decisions and all of that fun stuff, but that's empowerment. That's being a leader, right? Giving them the opportunity to do something for themselves. We used to call it as entrepreneurship, right? You're building a little part of the business within somebody else's business, right? So that they feel part of it. But I think one thing that we should talk about as well is like before even having these people come into play, Brian talked a lot about you can hire somebody with a really good skill set or hire somebody that is moldable, teachable, as a sponge, so on and so forth. You can't hire that type of a person, like that person that doesn't necessarily have a lot of those skills unless they actually align with the company values. Because if they don't, then they may not align with what you're trying to do. They may not see the vision and they're just not going to be bought into it. So you need to find the right people that align with company values, because at the end of the day, if they're that one bad apple in the business and they start making friends or create a clique within the actual business, that can turn things around really, really quickly. And that's not what you're looking to do.
Yeah, 100%. Hire slow, fire fast. An employee is literally the most expensive thing that you can have in your business. So understanding, I think that's why it's super, super important to, when you're hiring for someone, having benchmarks or KPIs in place where you can understand if that employee is profitable. Because at the end of the day, if you're just like, for example, if you hire a friend, that friend is taking advantage of the fact that you guys have a friendship in place. We have a lot of friends in our business, but we have a line in the sand. We made it very clear that we're not afraid to let go of people just because you're friends. At the end of the day, it's a business decision. So when you're hiring these people, you need to make sure that you have benchmarks or KPIs in place that you can measure them towards and against, so that if they're actually making you money. And make sure that you're making those decisions fast, because if you let it on for too long, it can be extremely unprofitable for you. And just imagine if you had the right person in that role instead of a bad person in that role. It can literally make such a huge difference. But in my opinion, what it really comes down to, the right people are going to be the ones that are aligned with the values. So when we worked corporate recruitment for 3.5, almost 4 years, and one thing that, every single technical interview, it wasn't just like, hey, can you do the job? But it was like, hey, what are you looking to achieve? Can they help you on that? What kind of soft skills do you have? All of these things. So understanding your culture and where you want to go as well is so freaking important on the front end, because trust me, toxic people within an environment can be extremely, extremely depressing. It can kill the morale and the culture within your organization, and you don't want that. Even in Amazon, when you're doing and you're building virtual people, have times where you can send them gifts, have times where you can hop on a call just to mingle with everyone. You want to make sure that they're a part of the family, because as soon as they start to get more involved, trust me when I say this, they will make you a lot more money when they actually feel like they're a part of something more than just a regular day-to-day job.
Yep, absolutely. The investment into an employee, hiring somebody is the most expensive, either in the development of it, or if you make that wrong hire, you can lose a lot of money. but on top of that as well, a lot of time with the training and all that kind of stuff as well. So long story short, hire the right people. And if they're not the right fit, like you should always have a probationary period, right? If they're not the right fit, then you need to make sure you make a decision really quickly instead of trying to drag it on, because as soon as you start to feel or see that they aren't somebody that can help build that business with you, then they're not doing any good for you. And you're just gonna have that burden over your shoulder. And it's very likely that the other A players of the company are probably feeling the exact same way. So when you start to build, we call it our core team essentially. When you start to build up people, you start to form what we call a core team. And that core team, use that core team to help make decisions with you, especially about things like this, right? Is this person a long-term fit for the company? If not, why not? And that way you're not just super subjective based off of what you see. Maybe they work really well with other people, and maybe you just need to have that conversation or that more stern conversation about what you expect from them so that things shift a little bit. But yeah, make sure you do your due diligence for sure, and don't drain any funds or anything like that into somebody if they're not there for the long run.
Yeah, I think something that's super cool and something that's worth noting as well is, when you get people involved in the capacity that were mentioned here, again, they're building the business with you. So more often than not, they will stay with you for a longer period of time. But naturally speaking, if you make someone into an A player and they develop a badass skill set, they are likely going to leave you in some capacity. And that shouldn't be a bad thing. It can be a scary thing. And people, I know when we work corporate, there's definitely scenarios where, our clients, people left our clients and they're like, oh, they're so awesome. But you need to ask yourself, like, what are you doing to keep them, for one? And for two, you also need to be comfortable with letting them go, because that means they've outgrown you and you should be happy for them to do that. If you've built them into something bigger and better, and there's nothing that you can do more for them, and they leave to start their own company, or they leave to be in a more high level role down the road, or whatever that looks like, that should be a pat on the back, right? So imagine if you were in a company where you weren't neglected for leaving, right? You're gonna feel so much better throughout your entire life. And we have a great relationship with our old boss, for example. Our old boss, when we were working corporate, even though we left him, and it was because he was someone that realized that we did likely outgrew our current role there, and we were bound for bigger, better things. And that should be something where you're like, if someone were to leave us, if Clara were to leave us, for example, we'd be like, okay, we've done an amazing job getting her where she needs to be so that she can do more and more in her life. Because at the end of the day, no one wants to work for somebody for the rest of your life. We experienced that when we were working corporate. Clara, if you're listening to this, don't leave us. But seriously, like, everyone is bound to do bigger and better things. And in my opinion, in order to do that, you need to be working completely for yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't have anything else to say. I think hiring is super important. You can't do everything by yourself, guys, especially if you want to take your business to the next level. Like, hire the right people and be there in the building phases with those people as well. Don't be afraid to hire somebody without a skill set and they have the means to, especially if it's a non-complicated role. If it's something like accounting and finance, obviously you need to hire somebody with a skill set. You can't just train for that, especially if you're not an accountant or somebody in finance. So be specific in that. But a lot of the roles, especially in our kind of line of business, if you're listening to this and you're in Amazon, a lot of it can be trained for. The only other point I would say to this is when you're hiring somebody, make sure you understand the role in depth as well, because there's no other way for you to validate that they are in fact doing a good job or the right job, I should say, without knowing exactly what you're looking for. So one of the biggest mistakes that I see people in the Amazon world do is they go and hire and outsource too quickly. And in turn, it might put a bottleneck into the business, because let's say they hire somebody to do their advertising, their PPC, and they're getting a lot of sales, but it's not profitable, right? But if I didn't know how to look at what ACoS was or what my break even was and what all of these different metrics, how would I have known, right? You need to be able to have a pulse on how people are doing.
I think something also is another opportunity to empower your employees. And to be honest, this was something that we second guessed ourselves on, as in, when you're developing a role, like for example, the journey that I had mentioned, where you're going from someone that does everything, figuring out what they're really good at, and letting them do that, and then hiring people that are even better than that. They're coming in with a higher salary or a bigger skill set. Those first two portions I had mentioned there, when they transition to that role, right? By that time frame, you should have a very clear direction of what that role looks like. And the best way to do it, both from a cost saving standpoint, but also a time saving standpoint for people that are in a higher level position within your organization, is this, that person. So again, we've put Clara as an example. Clara, when she was building out client success, there was a lot of things that would always come up that we mastermind, chatted about, and then brought into the picture. And what we did was we empowered Clara to be like, hey, build out a process for this role and let's document that in some capacity. And that way you're building out this library of standard operating procedures. So for whatever reason, Clara does decide to leave us and she's on to bigger, better things, we do have that opportunity of everything documented within that journey, right? Which allows us to go ahead and easily train someone afterwards. The role's already built out, it's already been working to its full capacity. It's just a matter of transitioning someone into it. So living in an abundance mindset when it comes to talent, this is the best way to go about it. Because imagine this, if you don't have operating procedures in place and you only knew the person that's in the role current state is the only one that knows how to do all of those operating procedures, like their daily rhythm and workflow throughout a day. If they leave you suddenly, then you need to now figure out what that role will entail. So you're literally back to the drawing board. So make sure that you're documenting every single role, what each task is, how to do each task. Even better, what we like to do is document it within the standard operating procedure document, and then also create a Loom video of actually doing the daily practice and then throwing that into the same document, right? We even brought in a company to systemize everything within our organization to make sure that we have processes in place and everything documented so that it's literally like this plug and play asset that we're building of a company. Super, super cool when you can get to that point, because at that point, it's just a matter of adding more people to scale your business, right? It's literally infinitely scalable. All you got to do is find talent. And if you live in the mindset of having an abundance of talent out there, you can hire as many people as you want.
All right, guys. Well, that's the 1 + 1 = 3 show. Again, every single Monday, we'll be doing these guys 10 a.m. PST. And if you have any topics, make sure to submit them. Brian and I like to just jam and talk about whatever. We'll come up with a topic if nobody else does, but definitely utilize us if you have the ability or have any questions and want us to kind of mastermind on it. Hope you guys have a good day.